around. We've been around since the mid 1990s. It's a diverse group of professionals and citizens. We've got law enforcement, we have neighborhood associations, we have mental health professionals, we have treatment professionals. We pretty much run the gamut of folks that are really wanting to address alcohol-related harms in our state. And we really do that by focusing on 5 areas. And those are, hopefully I won't neglect any of them, but those are policy, working with youth on youth leadership initiatives, working to educate the public about alcohol-related harms and the solutions, using the media to advocate for change. And then the last one is working with our law enforcement partners to enforce what laws we do have on the books. And so part of the reason that we're here today is to kind of not only detail some of the harms connected to alcohol and youth in our state and communities, but also to really talk about what we know works based on the ton of research that's out there, both nationally and internationally, to reduce excessive alcohol consumption, which includes underage drinking, but also includes like binge drinking among adults. So with that, I will turn it over to Liene, who will kind of take you through the rest of the presentation. If you have, I think they instructed to you to, if you have any questions, you can certainly type them in the chat, and then we'll try to allot some time out of the 30 minutes at the end to allow for some questions, or if we go over, and I'm willing to stay longer if you have additional questions and the time to ask them. So with that, please, Liene, take it away.
Yeah, so just very generally, excessive alcohol consumption, like Chris mentioned, does include underage drinking. Then there is binge drinking, heavy drinking, and also any alcohol consumption by women who are pregnant. So binge drinking is looking at drinks per occasion, and then heavy drinking looks at drinks per week on average. What are the harms? There are short-term and long-term harms. Some of the short-term, maybe more obvious ones as well: injuries, violence, alcohol poisoning, such as alcohol-impaired crashes. And then for the long-term, different health issues, chronic diseases, at least 7 types of cancer, memory problems, mental health conditions, and other social problems. So nationally and in Nebraska, what are some stats? Why do we do the work that we do? So excessive alcohol consumption is the 4th leading cause of preventable death in the nation, with more than 140,000 deaths per year, which is almost 3.6 million years of potential life lost. And this was data that was collected between 2015 and 2019, and that's, like I said, annually. Specifically for Nebraska, we rank as the 6th worst binge drinking state, so 19.5% of our population, and that is not just 21 and older. It actually includes 18, 19, and 20-year-olds as well, have reported binge drinking in the last 30 days. And then we are the 2nd worst self-reported impaired driving state, with 955 episodes per 1,000 population. And the way episodes here were defined was from location A to location B, that's an episode. So maybe if I'm going from my house to a friend's house, that's an episode. And then also annually between 2015 and 2019, approximately 720 Nebraskans died from alcohol-related deaths. And then in 2014, there were just over 2,400 alcohol attributable hospitalizations in our state. Of those deaths, the 720 deaths, there were about 10% related to the alcohol cancer, different alcohol-related cancers, which would be the mouth, the pharynx, esophagus, stomach for female breast, and colorectal. I think I remembered all of them there. Then there is a study that is done, or research that's collected of different cities across our nation that looks at also binge drinking. It does not include every single city in the nation. For the 21 data, I believe it was around 130 cities were surveyed, and we see the 3 red highlights, with Harney being the worst binge drinking state in this data set, Lincoln the 7th, and the Omaha metro area as the 13th. And again, this is in 2021. This data is collected annually and does vary slightly. So for example, in 2020, Lincoln was actually the worst binge drinking city, not state. So underage drinking, alcohol is the most widely used and abused drug by teenagers. And those who do consume alcohol prior to the age of 21, or actually prior to the age of 15, are 6 times more likely to become alcohol dependent by the time they are of legal age to consume. Various studies have been conducted to look at the harms associated with this. And especially for those youth who may get involved in the juvenile justice system, for those who consume underage, they're much more likely to be involved in violent behaviors and can commit crimes, and they're compared to their non-drinking counterparts, I'm sorry, and that can impact them also into adulthood, where they may keep those tendencies going. Of the high school students in Nebraska that were surveyed, 43% indicated they had their first drink prior to the age of 15. So like I mentioned, they may be 6 more times more likely to become dependent on alcohol in the future. And then 20-year-olds, actually just over half of them reported binge drinking the last 30 days as well. And then something that's always kind of a shocking stat to me is that in 2013, underage individuals just in the state of Nebraska consumed almost 5.7 million gallons of alcohol, with majority of those being consumed in the form of binge drinks. So that would be 4 or more drinks for women on occasion, and then 5 or more for men, or boys and girls in this case, since underage. And then specifically for Nebraska, a study was conducted to look at those costs associated with underage drinking. And they concluded there were at least 3 homicides, 2,700 non-fatal violent crimes, such as rape, robbery, and assault, 4,500 property crimes, 8,400 public disorder crimes, such as vandalism, disorderly conduct, curfew violations, and at least 114 teen pregnancies. So we want to think more upstream. We want to think how we can prevent these youth from starting alcohol consumption, to prevent them from entering in any kind of juvenile justice system.
And I just want to interject. Some of you may have noticed that a lot of this data is older, and that's because the federal funding that really was devoted to underage drinking, the enforcement of underage drinking laws, it went away in the earlier part of the last decade. So a lot of that data is no longer available. For over the past nearly 10 years, we've been using old data.
Yes, unfortunately, that is the problem with research and public health, but we keep going as best as we can. We were talking about those 15-year-olds, or those individuals who consume prior to the age of 15. So this image shows a 15-year-old non-drinker on the left and a 15-year-old drinker on the right. This is an MRI scan during the working memory test. So you see those red spots that those are the parts of the brain that are being used for the non-drinker and drinker, which you see very little for the drinker when they are conducting that test. So we see how much brain development can truly be impacted by alcohol consumption. Sexual assault is another potential outcome or result of alcohol consumption by adults and youth, of course. Research has consistently found that approximately half of all sexual assaults are committed by men who have been drinking alcohol. And this isn't just to say that, oh, men are the only perpetrator. We know men and women can be perpetrators. This was just a study that specifically looked at men. And there are estimates that alcohol use among perpetrators has ranged anywhere between 34 to 74%. Approximately half of all sexual assault victims have reported alcohol at the time of the assault, with also ranging from 30 to 79%. Again, alcohol isn't just an issue of the perpetrator. It can be both the perpetrator and the victim, unfortunately. Alcohol and suicide is another definite problem in our state and in our nation, as alcohol is the top substance used among drug-related suicide attempts that do end up in the emergency departments. 37% of suicides and 40% of suicide attempts are often preceded by acute use of alcohol. And then specifically in Nebraska, suicide was the 13th leading cause of death in our state. And specifically for 10 to 44-year-olds in the state, it was the 2nd leading cause of death. In 2019, 20% of the suicides that were committed in Nebraska involved alcohol. And numbers-wise, this is approximately 63 individuals. So what can we do to prevent this, to tackle this issue? So the World Health Organization has 3 best buys to look at how to reduce harmful alcohol use, such as increasing alcohol taxes, enacting and enforcing bans on or restrictions on advertising, and then enacting and enforcing restrictions on physical availability of retailed alcohol. So the physical availability will be like alcohol outlet density. How many businesses, how many stores are there within a half-mile radius? Are they close to a school? Are they close to a church? And so on. And just looking at those and how we can best serve our communities. And then some research to back specifically the alcohol.
Actually, I'm going to interrupt you, Liana. Can you go back one slide for me?
Of course.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, obviously we could, and a lot of coalitions that are involved in substance misuse, and many of them do focus on underage drinking. They tend to want to convince youth to not drink, and obviously somebody should be bringing that message to youth. We hope parents, but also adults in the community and in their school. We find that it can be we just kind of run in circles, right? As we get through, as we make a breakthrough to perhaps one youth, by the time they leave high school, we're getting more youth into the it just becomes this this cycle that we're never able to fully achieve the goals that we would like to eliminate underage drinking and to eliminate the tragic consequences that can come from it. And so as an organization and our board of directors, basically we're really focused on those environmental strategies that are going to change the environment in which these individual decisions are made. Also recognizing that youth, as Liana mentioned on the previous slide, their brains are still developing until their mid-20s, right? So they don't assess risk. I'm sure everyone on this call is aware, the same way that we do, because of that, the fact that they're still developing, and they just don't have those kind of guardrails in place. And so while we recognize the importance of talking to youth, we also understand that when we have so many youth reporting that they're drinking every month, we're not truly going to make a dent in that figure if we don't focus on the environment. So, and that's where these best buys come into play. These are really recommendations for city and state governments and federal governments as well, to get the most bang for their buck, essentially. So you can take these measures, which on their face seem pretty simple, right? Well, we know that they're often very difficult to achieve because of the politics, because of where you might be in the country, a more conservative state or a liberal state, or you've got an industry that is well funded and can contribute to campaigns, because there's a focus on economic development and small businesses and communities. So there are a number of factors at play, and it's a very uphill battle. But if we are able to achieve these increases in price, restrictions on advertising, reduce the availability of alcohol in our communities, then we're going to have less youth getting their hands on alcohol, and then getting into trouble or potentially tragically losing their lives. So that's really the goal of our organization, is to try to facilitate that policy change. And we're hoping that that you all will be a part of that push, right? To not only help the youth that are already in the system, and hope that they won't return to it, but also to change the environment so that we are affecting tens of thousands of youth that we will never know or see, that are across the state of Nebraska, because we made these changes. So I just wanted to kind of give a little more context on that.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So I see there are a couple questions, comments in the chat. I'll go to the next slide, then we'll do the chat, and then we'll share some resources from across the state with you all. So if I could get the click to correct, there we go. So some positive outcomes, increasing alcohol taxes really is one of the most effective, obviously one of the heavier lifts since it is a policy, but it does have great positive outcomes. There was a study conducted in the state of Maryland after a 3% alcohol sales tax increase. So there are two ways that you can look at taxes: a sales tax, which would be more local, whereas an excise tax is throughout the state. So in that Maryland study, they found that 17% decrease in adult binge drinking, 26% reduction in high school youth alcohol consumption, and then a 28% reduction in youth binge drinking, as well as a 6% reduction in alcohol positive drivers. And then in Illinois, the alcohol taxes were increased in 2009, and they resulted in a 26% reduction in fatal alcohol-related motor vehicle crashes, as well as significant decreases in sexually transmitted diseases such as gonorrhea and chlamydia. Let me jump to the chat here. Will you read the 5? Oh, I'm not sure which 5 things they are. Oh, Chris already got that. Thank you, Chris. Sorry. Would you be willing to email the slides to the participants? We'd be more than happy to email the slides. Yep. Chris,
yeah, we addressed most of these. So the last question that just came in regarding marijuana and THC, we are strictly focused on alcohol because alcohol is such a huge problem and it is legal. So it obviously has a lot of demonstrated already impacts on the community. So we've always been just focused solely on alcohol, which is a little unique because most substance abuse prevention coalitions do focus on multiple substances. So that's a long way of saying that I don't know. So apologies for that.
So as an organization, we're always happy to be a resource to you all, but in general, some other resources that you're possibly aware of, possibly not, behavioral health regions, local public health departments, and we have community coalitions across the state as well. They're not projects from out there, their own, but they're similar to us. So Buffalo County Community Partners out in Kearney, Community Connections in North Platte, and Monument Prevention Coalition in Scottsbluff. And you see the contacts for those 3 local coalitions. You have why is this not clicking? There we go. The behavioral health regions. So you can take a look at which county you're in, because I believe you are all statewide. Which region could be helpful to you, as well as the local public health departments across the state. And then we'd love to have you join our coalition. We just had a coalition meeting this morning. So we meet the second Wednesday of every month at 9 a.m. If you're in the Omaha metro area, we're at the UNO Community Engagement Center. If you are not in the Omaha metro area, please feel free to reach out. We'd still love to have you. We do have a Zoom option for those not in the metro. We have local and national speakers that come and share what's going on in their organizations or specific topics. This morning, Chris and I discussed how the liquor licensing process works and how organizations and citizens can be involved. So please feel free to either email us or put your email in the chat, and we'd be happy to add you. We also have a monthly newsletter, which the link is provided. It will be in the slides when we send them out, or please feel free to email us as well. To be added to the newsletter. It comes out once a month, and we discuss what's going on in the state, sometimes nationally, just depends what has been in the news and what we've been a part of. Are there any other questions?
Deanna, do you find, because we serve the entire state of Nebraska through NJJA, do you find that there's much of a difference between the alcohol use among teens, rural versus urban areas?
I don't know if I've very specifically looked at the data, Chris.
Yeah, we don't notice a difference. It's pretty even. I know that the the common conception is that, you know, there's nothing to do, they're bored, and so they drink as a consequence. But we find it's really more like the availability of alcohol, how cheap alcohol is, that leads to the drinking versus, you know, if they're isolated or not, or if there's things to do.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Here's our contact information. If you, like I said, want to join our coalition, receive our newsletter, ever have any questions about something that we could maybe be of assistance to, or would like research, please feel free to reach out. We'd love to help. We'd love to partner in any way to tackle this issue and help the youth of our state.
Yeah, it really is it's a social justice issue for youth too, and we know that because you know, kids are targeted particularly on social media by alcohol companies. It's actually, maybe many of you might not know, but the advertising, it's really only regulated in terms of if it's truthful or not. The industry is entirely self-regulated, and they have their own rules, that they write their own rules, but they frequently violate their own rules. And a lot of those products, if you look, you know, if you watch the Super Bowl and you see alcohol ads, a lot of them include, like, you know, comic book characters or bright colors, fantasy, you know, scenarios that really appeal to youth. And that is really important. There's been a number of studies that show that if a youth finds a branding really attractive, that's what they'll drink when they you know, go to purchase that alcohol or get it from a friend. That can be really important. So, you know, they are targeted, and because they produce so much money, and you saw how many millions of gallons Nebraska underage youth drink, and that's a lot of money to the alcohol industry. So so it really is a social justice issue. Yeah, and thank you for the comment, April. Yes, you know, and we know that parents are really important for youth, right? If they're abusing alcohol, then the youth is much more likely to abuse alcohol. That's been demonstrated in a number of scientific studies as well. So definitely, the good thing about everything that we do is that it's all under that umbrella of excessive alcohol consumption. And all of the strategies that we are attempting to employ and do employ, like we do compliance checks with law enforcement to really target underage youth, but everything is going to impact the entire population that is drinking excessively, both the adults and the youth. So it is important work, and we need all the support we can get. So we're definitely welcoming if anybody wants to join us in that endeavor. And I think that pretty much covers everything that we wanted to talk about today. Well, we're happy to stick around if there are any other questions, but I defer to you.
As many of you know, I'm Tammy Sassman, I'm the Executive Director for Nebraska Juvenile Justice Association, and I just want to thank Liene and Chris for presenting today. So just great information, great data for all of us to keep in mind in regards to working with the youth we work with and their families. So I appreciate your time.
Absolutely, and I know there was a request to send around the slides. So if I'll have Liene send that over to our point of contact, and then if you could distribute it to everyone, that'd be great.
Yep, and thank you for everyone who joined us today. We appreciate it, and stay tuned for some more trainings from NJJA. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.